Good morning from Surrey, and here with Chief Constable Gavin Stephens. Gavin, just orientate us first. We're in woodland.
We are, yeah.
Walking along a footpath that's come from Force Headquarters.
From Mount Brown in Sandy Lane. We're on sand, hence the name. This is part of the North Downs Way, and we're heading from the place where we've been in Surrey Police for 70 years across to an art gallery, Watts Gallery, that actually contains Barack Obama's favourite painting.
Really?
And a nice little tea room there at the end.
Tea room
well.
and possibly an ice cream.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of I've got ice cream on the brain at the moment, but we may not get that particular bit on the video, but we'll take one or two photos and put them on social media.
Yeah.
Let's carry on down here. And so, sorry, you came to Surrey having been brought up in Hartlepool.
Yep.
Which I loved when I was there just a few weeks ago. So brought up in Hartlepool, came down to Cambridgeshire, joined the police there, and then on to Surrey, where you've served in every rank.
Yeah, started as a PC over in Caterham,
and now find yourself as the NPCC, National Police Chiefs Council, lead on finance, which you've taken over from Dave Thompson. Dave in the West Midlands had that responsibility for a few years, I think, and also that you've also got responsibility for a communications related role that includes social media. So quite a portfolio there, lots to talk about on
we've got a jogger behind us.
Well, let's move to one side. Morning to you.
Thanks.
Slightly narrower footpath, and it at least is slightly downhill, not significantly uphill, which so you don't have my heavy breathing yet to contend with as we make our way up.
I think we're pretty flat all the way.
Excellent news, very good news. So let's start with police finances. These, well, to be honest, I can't remember a year in the past 30 of my experience when police finances have been anything but challenging.
Yeah.
And they're certainly pretty darn challenging at the moment, aren't they?
They are, yeah. I mean, you know, most of my sort of senior leadership career was through the years of austerity. So we were always looking for, you know, where's the next chunk of savings going to come from? Where's the next round of efficiencies? I mean, it's been great to have the growth back in the 20,000, but of course that only just puts us back to a baseline from many years ago, and at the same time you know, demand has been significantly growing and changing in nature, becoming more sort of complex, and if that wasn't enough, throw a pandemic into it and the stretch on national finances, and you know, there's no doubt we're all going to have to think long and hard in this spending review about the things that are really important to us, and we're in the midst of those discussions with colleagues in government now. So let's just unwrap first the 20,000. So the 20,000 you refer to, just for those outside the UK not familiar with the shorthand here, 20,000 additional police officers that the government committed to probably now about a year, maybe 18 months ago, and those very broadly to recruit or to add 20,000 officers, taking account of those that are retiring, the need would be to recruit something like 50,000 or so. Yeah. So are those simply 20,000 new recruits, or are they 20,000 net extra, taking account of the retirements? Yeah, so the actual recruitment numbers to take account of those sort of leaving, moving on, retiring, it's a huge national logistical exercise. So we've set up a national programme, the Uplift programme, that's been dealing with that. Actually through that learned about all sorts of efficiencies that we can get in our recruitment processes nationally, things that we can do to better increase representation in policing. Absolutely. So there are lots of good things that have come from it. And the other thing that's changed in that time as well is the variety of entry routes into policing. We've got a party coming towards us. I think what we're going to do is just park ourselves here for a moment, let this group pass, and we'll carry on until they've gone past. So some real challenges in getting that 20,000 additional, including on the representation, and including
in the teeth of a pandemic, when the whole recruitment mechanism will have changed. Now, I just want though to focus on.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. We thought we'd let you come through first.
Really kind. Ladies first.
Absolutely. Whoopsie, watch yourself.
Have you been to the tea room? Is it open, do you know?
It is open.
It opens at 10:30, so it's now.
I think we're perfect timing.
Yeah.
Very good, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Looking at Surrey, so Surrey has over the years had a mixture or a ratio of officers to staff that is more heavily staff members than officers than any other force. It certainly was the case some few years ago. I'm not sure that remains the case, but if the ambition is to recruit additional officers, doesn't that disadvantage Surrey in some way, because your proportion of officers to staff, the staff numbers are that much higher?
Well, within the uplift funding comes money for additional staff as well, and one of the debates that we often have with our communities, but also with colleagues in government as well, is to try and dispel this myth that police staff are support service staff, because the police community support officer is a member of staff, a crime scene investigator, a detention officer, those in digital forensics, the list goes on. All of these vital functions are police staff, and I think having that mix right, a balanced police team is really, really important. So although there's 20,000 officers, there is part of the budget to make sure that you're increasing police staff in a proportionate way too.
So sorry, not disadvantaged in that
no,
that ambition, that determination to get those additional officers.
Yeah.
And then on to the broader financial matters.
Yeah.
With the pressures that the pandemic is going to place on government finances, we've seen, for example, that police officers' pay. There was no increase in pay in the recent round, whereas there were for one or two other key professions. Now, there has been quite understandably disquiet, even dare I say uproar about this amongst the police community, but that's an indication that finances are going to be particularly tight. If you want to expand on the police pay side, by all means do. But so not only that then, but also how that then affects other services, particularly in an environment where there seems to be a growing expectation that policing is going to attend every call to service from the public. How do you square that circle?
Well, with great difficulty, I think. So, I mean, picking up on the pay points first of all. It was what happened this year was a confirmation of the pay freeze, so we were expecting it, but to have it confirmed after the pandemic. Morning.
You're welcome.
Was a bit of blow for colleagues, particularly as across the country we'd stepped up to what needed to be done during the pandemic. Colleagues had put themselves in danger, and I think one of the things that was a bit of a misunderstanding was the nature of the police role. We are involved in health and social care as well. I mean, about 40% of what comes into our contact centre here in Surrey can be categorised as health and social welfare calls. So we'd been part of that humanitarian effort during the pandemic, and I think colleagues found it really hard not to have that recognised in pay increase. In real terms, if we continued as we are, it would take something like another 8 or 10 years for colleagues' pay to catch up in real terms. So, and if you live in a county like Surrey, which is, really expensive, it is difficult to set down family roots here. When you look at some of the sort of financial health surveys that we do with our colleagues in the Police Federation, the number of colleagues that have less than £100 left at the end of each month is really high. So, those pay increases are needed for financial well-being, for emotional well-being, but also for the practicalities of day-to-day living for many colleagues as well. So
There are some additional funds available to those living, certainly in the Met. There's a London waiting, isn't there?
And
there's a bit of a southeastern waiting, but not sufficient. Not sufficient to.
No, and you know, these are pay increases that need to be fully funded in time as well. So, you know, certainly as we enter into negotiations on the spending review, that's one of the things that's very, very high up our list, along with sustainability for the 20,000 uplift. You know. The cost of that increases over time as colleagues get increments and so on. When we need to make sure that that's not a target that we achieve and then fall quickly away from, but something that we're able to sustain as a service nationally. So again, that's really important for us as a service that we do that.
So pay and you know, the personnel that each force have, officers, staff. And indeed volunteers, the specials and others, you know, they are a key part of delivery, and a very significant part of the overall costs that a individual forces incur. But there are other costs, whether it be ICT or estate or investing in new initiatives, which the impression given at the moment is that those areas are going to be under even more pressure than they have been. So back to the question of how do you square the circle of more demand and expectation that no call for service is too small for the police to respond in some way, and yet less money available.
So I mean, there are a few things. Clearly there are still some areas in policing where there are efficiency gains to be had, but when you've got a budget that is so salary heavy, you know, 80% in places, then it is difficult. But there are things that we can still do, and I'm always optimistic that we find new ways in things like what's happening with automation of processes, and you see collaborations between forces to do really well on that. What we can do together on our sort of shared services. So I think there's still plenty of opportunity for reform in the policing market that will drive some of those efficiencies, but not to the scale where we're able to cope with demand, which I guess brings me to my other point, in that I've long been an advocate that we need a much more preventative approach to policing, and we did see some of that language coming through in the recent Beating Crime plan that was published a couple of weeks ago. And unless we invest collectively with our partners at a local level to tackle the root causes, then we will be forever trying to keep up. So
this is the equivalent of people keep falling into the river, so let's get upstream and find out the reason that they're falling in.
And I mean, a practical example of that, in Surrey we have a partnership that's won some awards recently called the Surrey High Intensity Partnership Programme, which is working with those residents in the county that are often calling on multiple agencies for support, working with them intensively over the sort of medium to long term to try and, you know, resolve and meet their needs once and for all, and you know, reduce that sort of repeat acute demand on services. And that sort of approach can be successful. So you know, a strong return to that preventative outlook I think is really, really important.
And the Treasury, there are occasions when the Treasury can be persuaded to invest if the return is demonstrably a very significant level. In other words, an investment of £1 today demonstrably returns benefits of I don't know, £5 in 2-3 years, or £10 in 8 years or so. So challenging, putting it mildly. But you do see ways forward there, albeit in a tight economic financial environment.
Providing we get the underlying fundamentals right, which, you know, brings me back to that sort of sustainable funding point. You know, we've got to make sure that the basics are properly funded over the duration of this spending review, because if we don't, we simply won't have the headroom to be able to deal with some of those challenges.
Slight slip there. We don't want any accidents on this. I just need to.
It's a bit loose underfoot.
It's a bit loose. Yeah. Sorry, I cut across you.
No. So just saying that we've got to get the basics of the police funding right if we're to get any headroom to sort of work in this preventative arena as well.
We'll just stop again. There's more traffic on the footpath coming in. It's quite a narrow footpath, isn't it? So it's we'll just let these ladies go past. I want to. Hi there. Morning to you. You're welcome. Let's move on from finances to and you've got two challenging portfolios here. It's I'm tempted to ask whether you volunteered for these or whether it was you woke up one morning to find. I'm not going to ask that though.
The right place at the right time, I think.
Well, I'm not going to explore that, but the communications portfolio and social media, which on the face of it might seem a very gentle portfolio. But it's not.
No, it's not. I mean, so the Communications Advisory Group is a great group of colleagues to work with. So all of the heads of police communications around the country, very much part of our operational frontline delivery, particularly through the pandemic. I mean, one of the key ways of keeping people safe was keeping them properly informed. Play a vital role in that resilience effort, but in times of crisis and responding to emergency. So I really enjoy working in that group. And one component of that is our approach to social media, which is
how did you know I was going to go there?
Definitely changed over the years. I mean, like many colleagues in policing, I first started experimenting in social media on Twitter. I think my initial account was called Gav the Cop or something like that. I think police were some of the innovators actually in public service use of social media over the years. But what we've seen through the work of the portfolio and the great group of colleagues that I've got that have particular expertise in this area is just how that's changed, and communities' expectations have changed. Morning. About police use of social media, and increasingly it's a route of access to us. So in the same way as many other industries now, people expect to be able to get us online 24/7, 365 through a whole range of different social media channels.
And as a very interested external observer, the work on that has gone very well and continues to go very well.
Not without controversy, but
not without controversy. And I'm going to come on to one element of the controversy now, which is there are quite a number of serving officers, serving staff who've set up their own social media accounts, typically Twitter, and now find themselves either being told or discouraged from using those because of, so I understand, some I can't believe I'm quite saying this, but EU directive, but we're then not part of the EU anymore. So
well, it's not quite just the sort of, so there is a piece of European legislation in the Electronic Communications Code, and within that is a requirement for emergency services to be able to respond on these channels in the same way that you would if somebody calls you up on the phone. So I often think of it as that we've got to professionalise our response, and if somebody comes to us on social media, to expect the same level of professionalism and auditability, because we know what happens with some of these inquiries and investigations as you would if you called us on 999 or 101. There's then a bit of a misunderstanding because some colleagues are saying that means you can't have individually named accounts. So we'll break this down in stages. The first thing to say is the majority of community engagement on social media is not on Twitter. It's on Facebook. It offers lots of benefits in terms of targeting, bespoke communications. The level of engagement nationally we get on Facebook is much greater than Twitter, but there is a very strong community on Twitter of individual named officer accounts that enjoy that networking, that get great learning from each other, great support network. And what the sort of national approach is saying is that's fine, but I'd recommend that you get some organisational support for those accounts so that can be monitored 24/7, so that you've got some backup if you're away on holiday and somebody posts something to your account, that if you, as often is the case on Twitter now, if you become the focal point of some vitriol, and that's one of the things that disappoints me about the Twitter platform at the moment, is that there is content on there that's not professional, that doesn't paint policing in a good light, and if you become the focus of that, it's really difficult. And if you've got some organisational support behind you, then that can be really helpful.
So there's a separate element there, which is the responsibility of the social media provider, the likes of Twitter and Facebook, to suitably moderate their platform. But what I'm hearing then is that if the Twitter, and let's focus on Twitter because it is the one I think that has attracted the most pushback on what is understood about this approach. If you have an account that is demonstrably or could be understood to be a policing account, then the force has responsibilities to ensure that any call for service via that account is suitably responded to. If you have an account that is purely personal, then no such responsibility applies, although as a serving officer or member of staff, you would be expected to conform with the usual professional standards. Precisely. Okay, well that's hopefully, it certainly cleared things up for me. I have a clearer understanding now of that. And it is one specific area on Twitter which I quite appreciate is not the main platform. But
and there is a practicality in it as well, in that if a force has sometimes hundreds of named officer accounts that are clearly associated with policing, that's actually quite a tough logistical challenge to be able to keep a handle on those, which is why you've seen some forces, including my own, where we've gone through a careful thought process about what are these accounts for. Are they clearly personal or are they policing? Sometimes, of course, there are grey ones in the middle that need a bit of a debate, but to reach some sort of agreement where you've got a good balance. And the other thing I could say is to all of the colleagues out there that are producing fantastic content for Twitter, please consider getting that content onto your local beat accounts, onto your roads policing accounts, your CID investigation accounts, to give that insight into policing that I know our communities really love and appreciate. Actually you can reach a much bigger audience by doing it through some of the official accounts than through your own account that might have a couple or a few thousand followers, and some of the bigger accounts might have many tens of thousands of followers. So
what's working sensibly together where appropriate, rather than up against one another.
And we've seen a much greater range of contributors by doing that, and we've diversified as well. So over recent weeks we've been doing something called Surrey Police Live, which is live streaming on the different social media accounts, where we've given insight into the world of investigation, vulnerability, rural crime, recruitment. We've had a series of 10 episodes, and that gives them a sort of more long form content for colleagues to engage in that socially, get the interaction, the conversations through Facebook and YouTube. So that sort of diversity of content I think is really important as well, and not just the sort of short form snappy conversation that you get on Twitter.
Now as we move along this footpath, we're increasingly getting the road noise from a major Surrey artery ahead of us.
This is the A3 that we're heading towards.
It's the A3. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
You're going towards the A3. Absolute. Thank you so much, sir. It's the A3 now. You were born and brought up in Hartlepool, which for those that haven't been to Hartlepool or haven't been to Hartlepool recently, I can absolutely thoroughly recommend it.
Please do go.
It's a wonderful place. There's a whole bunch of things I can mention, but I will just confine myself to mentioning the oldest surviving and floating wooden warship, which is an absolute diamond to visit. I think something like the Royal Navy Museum in Hartlepool, but there are many other things to go and see.
The Trincomalee, I think it is.
That's exactly it. You've got it rolling off your tongue. It doesn't yet roll off my tongue like that. But so born and brought up in Hartlepool, now finding yourself in Surrey. I'm intrigued as to whether there are any elements of your upbringing in Hartlepool that you have been able to bring down to Surrey in a policing context.
Most definitely. I mean, I grew up on the beach at Hartlepool, a little village called Seaton Carew, which became known as Seaton Canoe after the chap that faked his own death in canoe down the sea and was then found in Panama. Yeah, so
okay.
But Seaton Carew is where I grew up, literally looking out my bedroom window across to the sand dunes, and you know, was really fortunate in having a very safe upbringing. Of course, this was in the 1980s, when economically it was pretty difficult in the northeast. You know, steelworks were closing, shipbuilding had pretty much finished, coal mines were closing down. So a lot of my mates at school were, you know, the sort of employment prospects of that were pretty difficult. But nevertheless, it always felt like a place where you would be looked after.
Now, talking about looking after, yeah. I think I just need to make sure that you're looked after here, because we certainly don't want the Chief of Surrey coming to grief on a road here. Anyway.
Yeah, well, we're at Watts Gallery, which was where we were heading for in the tea rooms in a moment. So I don't know whether you want to find a spot to have a sit and
what we'll
continue
do,
the
that looks as if it's fenced off. But the one further on, let's just head up there and we'll go and sit there.
By the pond before heading for a cup of tea. So yes, I just saying it always felt like a safe place to grow up, and when I came into policing, one of the in fact, if we walk through the gardens, there's a bit more space.
Your call, you're in charge.
I didn't expect it to be this busy this morning.
It's pretty attractive. It's
car
pretty
park full there.
Yeah.
Let's hope we can get a spot in the tea room.
Let's hope all the ice cream hasn't gone.
Yeah. And when I started policing, of course, you quickly realise that not everybody benefits from you know, that same sort of feeling of safety and community that, you know, I really had in the northeast, and that's really driven what I think about policing. And so in Surrey we have this sort of strapline about how we want it to be a county that not only is safe but feels safe too, and have a sort of you know, a range of a sort of policing tactics that try and achieve both of those, because I always think that the sort of objective safety is important, but if it doesn't feel safe to be in a place, then why would you want your kids to go to school there? Why would you want to open a business there? Why would you want to use the local amenities? So that sort of feeling of safety has always been really important to me. And earlier on in my career, I was lucky enough to work with Sir Dennis O'Connor, and we did a big national research programme.
Very well-known senior police officer.
Yeah, went on to be Chief HMI, and we worked with the University of Surrey here, with Martin Innes, who went on to be the Professor of Police Science Institutes over at Cardiff, on a big national research programme across 8 forces, 16 trial sites, another 16 control sites, where we were actually putting this theory into practice. You know, can you create these environments through really effective policing that make it a place that is safe but also feels safe as well? And that's carried with me right through my career, and definitely had its origins in the sand dunes of the beach on the northeast. Yeah,
illustrative of actually drawing insight from a variety of sources, not just Hartlepool in your particular instance, but also with your national work from different forces, each of whom will have their own particular strengths and weaknesses, and the opportunity to learn from both, and you know, with policing insight in mind here, absolutely internationally as well, that there are many ways to put together and deliver successful policing, and the opportunity to learn, whether it's from Hartlepool or from even Seaton Carew specifically, or you know, Wales, Northern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, Scotland, and so on.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're in discussions again with the University of Surrey with some colleagues out in Canada at the moment on some proposals to work with our children and young people to get them more engaged in policing. And I often think the work that we do with children and young people is the only opportunity that we get to police the future, because if you get that bit right, then it definitely has benefits. So that sort of collaboration is one of the things that I love about policing. I really enjoy it. I was lucky enough earlier on this year to be awarded an honorary fellowship by the university, and as part of that I had to do a short 3-minute acceptance speech in the cathedral, and I did it on the topic of police and love, which are two words that you wouldn't often think go together, but for me they absolutely do. You know, I love policing. I meet colleagues every day that love policing, I think you really can put your heart and soul into getting a county that is a great place to be and feels really safe as well.
Well, police and love, it resonates with the police and friendship talk.
Yeah.
The love is a deeper passion than friendship, of course, but an important element there. Now, as we come to a close on this video of ours this morning, before we head into the place just here, it's traditional for me to close these discussions by asking the person with whom I've walked and chatted about their favourite charity or charities. So I don't know what yours are going to be, Gavin.
Well, so. I'm going to be greedy and go for a couple. I'll start with the policing one, and I'm a trustee for Police Care UK, which is a national charity but Surrey based. I've been doing that for a couple of years now, and Police Care UK really help colleagues and their families recover from trauma. And of course, we see so much trauma in policing, and that can have a real impact on colleagues. So that's just a fantastic charity. If colleagues have not looked it up, please just search for it online, have a look at Police Care UK and the brilliant work that they do, because we need all the support that we can get for colleagues when they've been through difficult times, both for them and their families as well. So that's my first choice. My second one is sort of closer to home, as it were, and that's Target Ovarian Cancer. So the thing that brought me to Surrey in the first place was my late wife Sarah. We met before university, working for GC in Chelmsford. We're together all the way through university and married for 18 years, but sadly in 2011, just as my son was starting secondary school, she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer and fought bravely for 3 years, but in September 2014 lost her battle. That's something that I still carry with me today, carry Sarah's memories with me today. She gives me a lot of inspiration still, but one of the things that I'd really like people to know more about what the signs and symptoms to look for, and Target Ovarian Cancer have got lots of great support material on that to help you spot the early signs, and also to support you if you get a diagnosis as well, and to help the families along the way. There's a lot of families that go through that journey at the same time. So they're my two choices. And
two choices there. Deepest condolences on the loss of your wife those years ago. And your son, you were telling me earlier, now at university, approaching his final year.
Yeah, so he's up in Durham having a great time doing computer science, and his mum was a teacher, Sarah was a teacher, and he's definitely got the love of learning from Sarah, and I think that's stands him in really good stead. And over recent years we've formed a really good partnership between us as well, and after Sarah died we were lucky enough to get time off work, and we did a bit of a long tour over 8 weeks, visiting various places, which was a great new start. And the one thing that's put a smile on my face this year as well is that he's going to do a charity run with me in September, which I've been pestering him to do. He's done one with me before.
Fantastic.
But it's something that kept me going through Sarah's illness, actually. I know we crossed running paths back in 2012 doing the London Marathon, and that was one of the things actually that kept me going through Sarah's treatment, was just to have something else to distract you, and keep your mind focused on something else, and training for the marathon with colleagues from Surrey Police, and I've kept up those running events ever since, and it's part of what keeps me sane in a way.
And you've got a fine collection of medals on your wall, but just on that 2012 marathon. What will stay with me throughout my days will be Surrey Police contingent in the marathon overtaking me, dressed in full ice hockey uniform. And I was completely unencumbered by anything other than the normal amateur marathon runners.
And a Batman outfit, I seem to
I
remember.
did have a Batman
for Crime Stoppers.
That's right, yes. But so being overtaken not just by Surrey's ice hockey team in full uniform, but also by others that I better sort of gloss over actually, rather than going into detail. Gavin, it's been an absolute pleasure
really
walking with you this morning. We'll turn the camera off now and head inside for a cup of tea. And
maybe an ice cream.
Maybe an ice cream. The two don't quite go together, but we'll find a way of dealing with both. Once again, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Bernard. Cheers.